So if evolution, the gradual and substantial change over time, is true, life is supposed to be functional only. For example, giraffes growing longer necks and legs to relieve feeding pressure or competition and browse available food high up in trees. And indeed, the other theory around this is that it was for improved viewing of predators. Now I wonder why the other herbivores haven't developed longer necks. They even share the same environment. I believe giraffes were created fully functional and formed, and we'll refer to the rete mirabile, which is a device in the upper neck of the giraffe, next session, and you'll be able to see that the animal that went into the ark with Noah was pretty much like we have them today, apart from the few extra species that resulted from the ancestral animal that went into the ark with Noah. But they're all giraffes still to this day. The other example that's quite common is apes leaving the arboreal or tree-dwelling lifestyles and becoming bipedal or walking upright to exploit savanna niches. And the idea there is that when food became scarce in the tree canopy, apes left their arboreal home in search for food in the savanna plains, and eventually had to lift themselves over the top of the tall grass in order to see predators better, and so develop bipedalism. Obviously the view is not the animal itself, but the environmental pressures that were responsible for that evolution. Whether you want to believe that or not, it's up to you. But I can just think back of my research in Kruger Park. There you can see a chimpanzee preying on termite alates. You can have a squiz of my research if you like at victormeyer.net. That picture, by the way, is not mine, it's also National Geographic's. It obviously chimps don't occur in Kruger Park, they occur around equatorial Africa. But the reason I've got that there is I assisted once when a very well-respected scientist was filmed on one of his studies, and he started out his narrative this way. Just find it before we get into full-blown human evolution. He said, when we were swinging around in the trees, so when we human beings were swinging around in the trees, and he didn't just say that to be interesting or intriguing, he actually believed it, and this was a highly intelligent person and a very notable scientist. This is actually what mainstream scientists believe, that we have evolved from apes swinging in trees, millions of years ago, of course. There we have a phylogenetic chart or an evolutionary tree of human evolution. Humans, chimps and gorillas, and we share a common ancestor according to the theory of evolution with the chimps about 5 million years ago. What's interesting though is the gap in the fossil record of chimpanzees and in the gorilla record. This is according to J.M. Clark. Now I wonder why that is. Is it because scientists are so focused on finding our origins that they forgot to study chimpanzees and gorillas in terms of their ancestry? Or have they assigned fossils to the human species instead of to some of the other apes that had gone extinct? Those bones there, it's not because we humans pick more bones with each other than chimps do, but it's just a representation of different fossils, and we'll quickly run through them. First up, Homo erectus. Homo erectus, according to the theory of evolution, lived approximately 1 million years ago. Then approximately 2 million years ago, it was Homo ergaster and Homo habilis. or handyman. And Homo habilis is actually disputed to be incorrectly assigned among evolutionists. I personally believe that Homo species could possibly be the pre-flood humans, but they weren't ape men, they were people just like you and I. Remember that we've lost just about all of the human genome before Noah, when all but 8 survivors were wiped out. So how those people looked like back then, we're not very sure of, but I'm sure that they weren't ape men. If you look around the human species today and look at ethnicity and diversity in people, you'll realize that there are marked and very stark differences phenotypically. So that's 2 million years ago. 3 million years ago, Australopithecus africanus, or southern ape of Africa. Then Australopithecus afarensis, about 3.5 million years ago, and Australopithecus anamensis, about 4 million years ago. Then we have Ardipithecus ramidus, about 5 million years ago, according to Campbell and Rees. And this is their book, the latest, the 8th edition, Common Biology textbook, not only for secondary students but also for tertiary students. And let me just read, or not read, but show you where this information is gleaned from. It comes from that chart there with all the fossils, very fragmented fossils, some not complete skulls, some have only pieces of mandible. You're welcome to come and have a look at this afterwards. So, where does beauty come from though? Again, this picture courtesy of National Geographic. Now, evolutionists might say we find a landscape attractive because there's potentially food there. They'll go on to waterfalls, there's water there, lightning, we can expect fire for our food, etc. However, how do we explain beauty in flowers? We don't eat flowers. How do we explain beauty in snowflake crystals, etc., etc.? So how did beauty evolve if evolution has no foresight and the result is only supposed to be functional? Courtesy of the Truth Project and a quote from Charles Darwin. This was a letter dated the 3rd of April 1860, about a year after his very popular The Origin of Species was published. And Charles Darwin said, "I remember well the time when the thought of the eye made me cold all over, but I have got over the stage of the complaint, and now small trifling particulars of structure often make me very uncomfortable. The sight of a feather in a peacock's tail, whenever I gaze at it, makes me sick." Well, I wonder why it makes him sick. That's an albino peacock. And again, one is left wondering, where does beauty come from, if not from God? Luke 12, verse 27 says, "Consider the lilies, how they grow, they neither toil nor spin, but I, Jesus, tell you, not even Solomon in all his glory clothed himself like one of these." There's a field of tulips. They belong to the lily family, or Liliaceae. Also, we can consider Matthew 6, verse 30. Given that these fields are replanted with vegetable crops after harvest, pretty much here today, gone tomorrow. All that beauty is but a thought. There's the glass-winged butterfly, occurring from Mexico to Panama, possibly even further south, and it's called Greta Otto. and one can think of symbiotic relationships that are species specific in terms of pollination, and that is pretty much unexplained by the theory of evolution. How a particular flower could have evolved just in time for a particular insect to show up, both of which are dependent quite often upon each other. The chances of that is virtually zero. You could go on to the termite gut, and there we have flagellates, mutualistic symbionts, trichonympha. There you have 3 individuals, and you can see their flagella, and there's 1 individual of Trichomonas, top left, and they actually assist the termite in breaking down cellulose in the wooden food of the termite. They cannot, these species-specific organisms survive outside the termite gut, and the termite won't survive without them. So how could those 2 organisms have evolved and show up at the same time in evolutionary time, which is quite vast, just in time to save each other's lives? It's not very plausible, let alone probable scientifically. Let me mention homology at this stage. And homology or sameness is the idea that we have similar features of structure in different animals. There we have the human arm, the cat leg, a whale's fin, and a bat's wing. By the way, this is courtesy of Pearson Education, that picture. This is pretty much the evolution of goo to you, or microbes to man, prokaryotes to eukaryotes. And though there are differences, evolutionists hold the view that those animals have got a common ancestor because of the sameness in structure. However, let me mention Professor Klitter's, T.E. Klitter that is, of the University of Pretoria, head of microbiology and plant pathology, what he said about this primordialism. And this was a public lecture titled "Could Life Have Originated by Chance?" was delivered on the 19th of March 1994. And he said primordial sea, in which amino acids and sugars allegedly originated, could not have existed, as no oxygen was present billions of years ago, according to the theory of molecular evolution. The temperature on Earth would have been between 400 and 500 degrees centigrade, which disproves a liquid sea. Organic reactions could rather have occurred in the atmosphere's water vapor. Furthermore, prokaryotes, that is, simple organisms without nuclei and other organelles, would never have adapted to produce oxygen, even in symbiosis, that threatens or is toxic to their anaerobic existence. Out of them, therefore, primitive oxygen-producing algae could not have evolved. And I could give you a copy of that if you wish afterwards. So the probability of life arising by chance is virtually zero.